Stephen faked amnesia and flew abroad to chase after his true love. I pretended to be poor and tricked a young puppy-like boy into sleeping with me. As a couple, we were both heading toward a bright future. Half a year later, Stephen failed to win over his goddess and came back with his tail between his legs. And I had already wrapped the puppy boy around my finger. So when Stephen begged me again and again to come home, I watched the little white-haired pretty boy tug at his freshly dyed black hair, his expression equal parts obedient and restless. Before I knew it, I blurted out to Stephen, "Maybe you should just get a divorce." Chapter 1. Just moments ago, Stephen and I had a huge fight. He trashed the entire room and stormed out, slamming the door behind him. Then his brother called me, said Stephen had been in a car accident. Can't deny. For a split second I thought, what a shame he didn't die. But humanitarian instincts won out. When I rushed to the hospital, all his brothers were already there. The attending physician, Raphael Bai, the young master of the Bai family, stood up straight the moment he saw me. He handed over a stack of test results. He hit his head. Temporary memory loss. When he'll recover depends on the case. Amnesia. Stephen never had much brain power to begin with. Could he even function now that he's lost his memory? My heart sank a little. Flipping through the reports, I asked, "Any other injuries? Things I need to watch out for? Any lasting effects?" But the man in front of me didn't answer for a while. When I looked up again, I realized Raphael had been watching me in silence the whole time. His gaze, framed by cool-toned glasses, was piercing and strangely cold. The corner of his lips curled into something unreadable, and he leaned down, speaking just loud enough for only me to hear. "Fake. Go take a look. See what your husband is playing at." Chapter 2. I quickly figured out what Raphael meant by fake. In the hospital room, Stephen glared at me with hostility and unfamiliarity. Before I could even step closer, he hurled something at me. It bounced off my pants and rolled to the door. A plain silver ring, our wedding ring, the cheapest style. Not because we were broke, but because it symbolized Stephen's rebellion against our marriage. Throwing that wasn't enough. Stephen pointed at me, fuming. "Margarita, I don't care how we ended up married, I'm not accepting it. You've always known, haven't you? The one I love is Miss Moo from the Moo family, not a workaholic robot like you. Why did you even marry me?" His tone was firm and full of fire, like some tragic hero defying fate and reality. Right in front of all his bros, he declared, "I don't acknowledge this marriage. I'm going abroad to win back Gabriella Moo." Oh, so this was all to fake amnesia and chase after the one that got away. Couldn't he at least put in a bit more effort? Stephen never dared act this arrogant around me in the early years. It was only after I kept giving in post-marriage that he got bolder and bolder. His brothers seemed to have planned it in advance and began chanting their slogans one after another. Great! I support Stephen in pursuing true love. We only live once, enjoy it while you can. Stephen can do whatever he wants. A marriage that's only on paper ain't worth shit. The last one added. Besides, how can Margarita compare with Gabriella? She's an old stick in the mud, older, bolder, and already looks ancient. Chapter 3. That comment crossed the line. The hospital room fell silent for a moment. Stephen looked nervously at the brother who had just spoken. Even that guy's face froze a little. I was the one who smoothed things over. With a smile, I slipped off the plain ring on my finger, picked up the one on the floor, and tossed them both into the trash. I agree too. If you want to go, then go. I'll wire you $2 million as spending money. If it's not enough, come to me again. No wonder they say I'm controlling after marriage. All of Stephen's savings were managed by me. That was originally arranged by his elders, but it didn't stop Stephen from resenting me for it. As I turned to leave, I didn't forget to remind him, "Young Master Stephen, if anything happens, remember to contact me in time. He's the son of the chairman of our company, my former employer's heir. Regardless of our marital status, I still had to make sure he was taken care of." Stephen clearly hadn't expected me to walk away so easily. His expression shifted a few times, mouth opening but no words came out. Raphael was still standing outside the room. When he saw me come out, he raised an eyebrow. I wasn't sure why he, as one of Stephen's so-called bros, would out him and his clumsy little performance. but I couldn't be bothered to guess their intentions. I gave a symbolic thanks. Raphael straightened up and lazily followed after me. That's it? Just a thank you? He wouldn't let it go. I risked ruining my friendship with a bro just to tip you off. At the very least. Shouldn't you buy me a meal, Miss Margarita? I frowned slightly. Sure, tell me what you want to eat. Send me the receipt later. I'll cover it. Raphael looked displeased. Seemed like he wanted to say more, but Stephen's voice suddenly called for him from inside the room, so Raphael stopped. Reluctantly. Chapter 4. Hardly anyone knew about Stephen's so-called amnesia, nor did his family have any clue that he had traveled across oceans to chase after Gabriella. Stephen clearly didn't want them to know, and I couldn't care less about making trouble. Gabriella was a passionate and free-spirited girl. Her life was always vast, wild, and full of color. For the first time ever, Stephen posted a photo collage on WeChat. Every shot showed Gabriella leading him to chase the northern lights, climb snowy mountains, ski, snorkel. Beautiful, both the scenery and the people. Especially the way Stephen looked at Gabriella. His eyes sparkled with longing, admiration, and infatuation, like a large dog who had finally been tamed. The night I saw those photos, I worked overtime until 11 p.m., nerves strung tight with exhaustion. I thought to myself, I need to relax too. I randomly walked into a bar near home, hoping that alcohol and smoke might help me unwind by force. What I didn't expect to work best was the live folk music. That deep, slightly husky, and gentle voice smoothed out the restlessness I'd been suppressing. After the last note faded, I looked toward the stage. The boy had soft eyes, drooping slightly. He wore a plain t-shirt and black pants, his left hand loosely resting on the mic stand. His pale skin and slender fingers were almost translucent under the lights. His face was delicate to the point of being androgynous, carrying a trace of weariness, and his hair was dyed white, like a little lamb that had wandered into a music bar. But then there was the tattoo curling from his neck to his collarbone, and the black studs on his ear, unexpectedly rebellious. Chapter 5. I wasn't the only one watching him. Behind me, a group of clearly wealthy girls had come just to see him. They were whispering among themselves. I heard this kid Bruno hates the rich. A bunch of rich women in the circle tried to sugar him up, and he cursed them all out. Cursed them out? With that kind of attitude? Isn't he afraid of getting blacklisted? Come on, look at that face. Who could bear to do that? Even if we can't keep him, it's still worth stopping by just to admire him. So what now? Weren't you planning to play with him a little? That's just talk. It's not like I can tie him up and take him home. I took a sip of my drink, then slowly removed my watch, earrings, and necklace one by one, placing them in my bag. At 1 o'clock, Bruno got off work. I left my blazer and purse on the table, splashed a little water on my shirt collar, then staggered after him. I followed for 10 minutes until the slim figure ahead of me suddenly stopped. His stunning face was twisted with irritation and impatience. Okay, lady, how much longer are you going to follow me? Planning to come home with me? Oof, spiky. I pretended to be tipsy, dazedly looking at him. 2 seconds later, I pointed down the street ahead. My home's that way. Bruno's expression twisted into a sneer full of scorn and disbelief. Then he suddenly turned around and walked in the opposite direction. When he was far enough away and turned to check again, he found me lying down right where he'd left me, limp as a rag doll. Chapter 6. I wasn't lying to Bruno. I really did have an apartment down that road, an old, shabby place where my mom and I used to live together. Not a single piece of furniture had been moved. It was still cleaned regularly. Not even a speck of dust. It looked like no one had ever left. Bruno had zero gentlemanly instincts. He carried me to the doorstep, dumped me there, and turned to leave. That wouldn't do. I hugged his leg, and suddenly tears began streaming down my face, soaking through his pants. What the hell are you doing? Bruno freaked out, trying stiffly to yank his leg free. You're already home. He was easy to fool. I gave him one watery, tear-filled look and he deflated instantly. He carried me inside and set me down on the couch. I locked my arms around his waist like a trap and wouldn't let go. The tears didn't stop. I don't want to live anymore. Sob, sob, sob. I got fired and I have no savings. Sob, sob, sob. No savings and you still went drinking? Those drinks were 100 a glass and you had 3. Huh? How did he know I had 3 drinks? I drunkenly raised my fingers and tapped them against his chest. One by one. Can't I enjoy one last moment of freedom before I die? The night was humid. My shirt was damp and clung to my skin, the outline of my collarbones barely visible. Bruno turned his head awkwardly, ears burning red. Hooked. That night, I didn't push things, but afterward, I showed up at every one of his gigs. Always had 3 drinks, then went home. Did that for 2 weeks, until one night, I stayed home instead, waiting. At 2 a.m., the doorbell rang. Bruno stood outside, face cold, guitar still slung over his back, asking awkwardly why I hadn't shown up that night. I said, didn't have enough money. Chapter 7. Half a year later, Stephen returned to the country and finally remembered I was his legal wife. He messaged me, asking me to pick him up at the airport. I had assumed Gabriella would come back with him, but it was only Stephen. As he strode over, I sized him up and noticed how much he had changed in these 6 months. Thinner, darker, his expression more composed. The power of a crush is really something. Stephen put down his luggage, then suddenly gave me a big hug from the passenger seat, his head buried deep in my neck, his voice humming, "Margarita, it's been so long, I actually kind of missed you." Traveling was exhausting, with several transfers, and Stephen smelled a bit off. I frowned and pushed him away. Jokingly, I asked, "What's up? Where's Gabriella?" Why ask about her? Stephen's reaction was a bit much. Unusual. I started the car and teased, "What? Didn't catch your true love and now you're mad?" Stephen's face stiffened, his tone rigid. I just went to hang out with her. Stubborn as a mule. I didn't bother arguing. We hit the highway. "Where are you going?" "Where to?" Stephen gave me a strange look. "Home." "Which home?" His eyebrows furrowed, irritation rising again. I explained, "I sold the apartment in City B. Everything else is still there." "Where do you want to go?" "The World Trade Center one? That's closer." "Sold it? When? Why didn't you tell me?" Chapter 8. The apartment in City B was where Stephen and I had lived after marriage. That place had suffered enough. Smashed countless times by Stephen. The last time, I stood in the bedroom doorway in my pajamas, watching him wreck the living room and kitchen. Like an angry, helpless dog tearing the house apart, he stormed out, slamming the door, declared he never wanted to see me again. The money-grubbing, cold, boring work machine. No idea how he came up with the fake amnesia stunt. It worked well. For that forgotten period, he could pretend everything never happened. No responsibilities. The day he left, I put the apartment up for sale at a rock-bottom price. Sold instantly, seeming guilty about his mess. Stephen reluctantly said, "Sold is sold. Then let's go to the World Trade one." Inside, he paced around, frowning. "You're not living here?" "Of course not. If you're not living here, why did you bring me here?" That question. I pulled my eyes away from the chat window and looked at Stephen calmly. "We never lived together. Your friends all know it. Our marriage is a mere formality." Stephen laughed absurdly. "No, what are you talking about?" I reminded him. "It's okay. You didn't know because you lost your memory. Well, now I'm telling you." Chapter 9. Stephen's face went rigid in an instant. Back when we first married, we'd actually had a stretch of honey-sweet days and a rather lively sex life. But the year after the wedding was exactly the part his amnesia erased. He had no way to contradict me. While he froze for a few seconds, new notifications flooded my phone. Besides a clingy past spamming come-home texts, there was a string from Stephen's buddy, Raphael. "He's back and you picked him up? Told you 6 months ago his amnesia was fake, yet you still went? Spineless much. Margarita?" Raphael's a hard one to read. I'd tried wiring him the money for that thanks dinner several times. He never took it. We hadn't had extra contact. Though in the past half year I'd bumped into him a few times, his gaze always half-latched onto me. Weird. But I dodged him like a viper. Nothing good ever comes out of Stephen's bros. I ignored the messages, leaving the World Trade apartment. I drove straight to the rundown old neighborhood in the East End. The car was parked far off. As soon as I reached the building, I saw someone sitting beneath a dim voice-activated bulb, white hair stirring in the night breeze. Up close, that exquisite face lifted, arrogant, impatient, eyes tinged with weariness. Why so late again? Overtime? My set's been over ages. Grinning, I pulled him up, fingers tracing the tattoo along his collarbone, then the stud in his ear. The more I looked, the more pleased I felt. Thanks for waiting. So, what yummy thing did little sister's boy cook for me tonight? Hands shoved in his pockets, Bruno leaned back, letting me paw him. Your hands are already full. Still hungry? Chapter 10. The cramped one-bedroom was spotless. 2 dishes and a soup steamed on the cozy table. Bruno's skills were a mismatch with his looks. He could sing, strum, cook, and do everything else. A multifunctional, gorgeous puppy boy. He ate quietly opposite me, cheeks puffing cutely with every bite. I picked up a few commercial gigs, extra cash. If you want anything, tell me in advance, he said in a flat tone. Your bro can provide. Who's your bro? Lids lifting lazily, he corrected himself. Your husband can provide. Zing. Hearing that face call itself my husband sent a jolt right up my spine. I'd like a new perfume. I picked one around 1,000, just within Bruno's budget. Smiling, I teased. My salary's going up. Want me to aim higher? Bruno raised an almost smile. Choose something that turns you on more. After dinner, Bruno went to wash dishes. Raphael's name lit up again. Margarita. Pretending to be broke to scam a pretty boy. Pick that up from your trash husband? Don't want me to blow your cover? Dinner with me tomorrow. My expression hardened. I glanced at Bruno's back and typed fast. Already have a husband and a boyfriend. Young Master Raphael. You angling to be which number side piece? The typing bubble lingered forever. Looked like he was furious. I just locked my screen when his reply popped up. So what if I am? Chapter 11. On the way to the dinner meeting, the more I thought about it, the angrier I got. Sure, I pretended to be broke to win Bruno over, but what else could I do? Blame me for having money? If I wanted Bruno all to myself, acting poor was my only play. But what business is that of Raphael's? Is he the morality police? I never expected Steven to be at the restaurant too. I stared at Raphael in shock. His own expression didn't look much better. You said you made an appointment with Margarita? Steven shot to his feet, eyes darting between Raphael and me. Yeah, Raphael answered, lips curling in some unreadable way. She's treating me to dinner. Steven looked utterly incredulous. I messaged you to come home and eat with me, no reply, and now you're here treating Raphael? And you believe whatever he says? I snapped, frowning. Then I couldn't help asking Steven, why are you even here? Raphael poured tea and slid the cup to me. Running into each other like this, what a coincidence. So what's going on? Steven demanded, half angry, half aggrieved. He reached out to grab me. Raphael calmly pulled Steven's hand back. Hands off. The hell's your problem? I'm touching my own wife. Chapter 12. My face went cold. Raphael could wait. I needed to deal with Steven first. Who was it that disavowed our marriage? Ran off to chase another woman. Spent 6 months alone with her. And only now comes back? If he liked Gabriella, so be it. Going after her while married? Fine, nothing to do with me. But failing to win her and then treating me like a convenient fallback? He's out of his mind. Steven, you and I both know this marriage means nothing to either of us. That's not true. Steven's eyes reddened as he stared at me. It's not true. We clearly... He couldn't finish. I knew what he wanted to say, that we'd once shared a real marriage bed, lived ordinary days of salt and pepper together. Before the wedding he'd clung to me, after the wedding he'd relied on me. But young Master Steven's carefree heart couldn't stand being caged. His family forced him to marry me, blocking his pursuit of Gabriella, then made him live under my financial rules, first time in his life he'd ever felt stifled. So he bolted for half a year. And what of it? Now he can't even admit any of this, because he lost his memory. Remember? He's not supposed to recall. Steven, go home. Get yourself dinner. Raphael and I have business to discuss. Under my gaze, Stephen's face drained of color. At last he rose and left in silence. Chapter 13. Serious business? After he left, Raphael gave a light chuckle. What serious business? I kept my face cold. What exactly are you trying to do? I hadn't expected Raphael to be this blunt. Since you're already looking outside, why not consider me? He took off his glasses unhurriedly. Those refined, icy fox eyes curved. Margarita, I'm far more useful than that poor lad. You like me? I was incredulous. Why? We've never even crossed paths before. Oh, we have, you just don't remember. When? Raphael finished cutting the steak and slid the plate toward me. A man only stays attractive if he keeps an air of mystery. I'm not telling you now. To me you're so mysterious you're practically a black hole, zero attraction whatsoever. I pushed the steak back to him. Thanks, but I've got hands of my own. I don't care whether you like me or what you're after. Raphael, stay out of my life. Raphael clenched his jaw, set down knife and fork, and leaned back. And if I insist? He said quietly. I smiled. Then I'll tell Stephen you were the one who spilled the beans about his fake amnesia from the very start. Raphael's family runs a medical business that depends heavily on Stephen's family. He wouldn't want to fall out with Stephen. Raphael let out an angry laugh. Burning the bridge after you've crossed it? Well, whose fault is it that your family built by the sea? Chapter 14. There was no way I was paying for Raphael's meal. Since he was footing the bill, I had the waiter box up a stack of pricey dishes for Bruno. Bruno's set tonight ran from 1 a.m. to 3 a.m., and he always came home starving. After that day, Raphael quieted down. Stephen, on the other hand, went berserk, calling and texting me every day, asking who I was with. I ignored him, until the day Stephen cornered me at the entrance of this shabby old apartment. Bruno and I had just come back from buying groceries. Bruno was walking ahead with a lollipop between his teeth. When he saw who was at the door he stopped in surprise. What's wrong? I almost walked into his back. Looking up, I met Stephen's incredulous stare. In an instant my expression turned cold. Maybe because Stephen looked emotionally unstable. Bruno straightened up and planted himself in front of me. Margarita, what are you doing? Stephen took a few deep breaths and pointed at Bruno. You went and found yourself a man this random? He's cleaner than you. I couldn't stand anyone talking about Bruno like that. I patted Bruno's hand. Go inside first. I've got this. Don't worry. Bruno may look aloof, but most of the time he does what I say. Right now he asked no questions, took the grocery bag from my hand, and murmured, "Leave the door open, shout if you need anything." Then he went inside. Stephen's whole face flushed red with anger. His words were sharp. Margarita, are you really cheating? We're not even divorced yet. Aren't you going too far? Chapter 15. The soundproofing here is mediocre. Luckily I'd already told Bruno I had a husband with emotional issues who ran off overseas last year before we could finalize the divorce. Bruno took it surprisingly well. Otherwise Stephen's sudden appearance would have meant smoothing ruffled feathers on Bruno's side. 2. Come on, what did you say in the hospital 6 months ago? Can't remember a single word? I pressed a thumb to my brow, annoyed. Young Master Stephen, you can fly halfway around the world to chase your goddess, but I'm not allowed to look for true love? One of those words seemed to stab him. Stephen's face went instantly white. True love? He rolled the phrase on his tongue, actually looking hurt. Nothing happened between Gabriella and me abroad. Oh, then you really are useless. Stephen lifted his eyes to me. Don't you like me anymore? You told me you did. That was ages ago, back before the wedding, when Stephen had just joined the company, all brash and reckless and leaning on me for everything. His dependence gave me a rush of satisfaction, and I did feel a brief flicker of affection. But the day his family, seeing I was capable yet backgroundless and easy to control, forced him to marry me, that fragile crush was buried under the way Stephen looked at me as though I were an enemy. I'm not as hopelessly devoted as you, still mooning over a past crush. Gabriella's coming back to the country. Stop trying to have your cake and eat it too. It's disgusting. See yourself out. As I swung the door shut, I caught, out of the corner of my eye, Stephen's desolate expression. Chapter 16. Because I'm still an executive at the Stephen Group, and our interests are tangled. Drafting the divorce papers has been slow. In fact, I hadn't even considered divorce until the day Steven returned. On one side, the cloud of Steven's family. On the other, Bruno. The scale inside me tipped completely. I don't need Steven's family that much anymore. But right now, I need Bruno. Slow as it is, the agreement will be ready in a few days. I told Bruno that once everything with Steven is severed, I'll take him to meet my mother. The very next day Bruno, without a word, dyed his hair black. The dark hair made him look much more well-behaved. For the first couple of days I kept feeling he looked strangely familiar, so fresh-faced. Hard to believe one person's looks and personality could suit my taste so perfectly. Another evening Steven called. Come home, please. Bruno had fallen asleep sprawled across my lap, awakened by the ringtone. He grabbed his hair, scowled, and pushed himself up, then, annoyed, sank his teeth into my thigh. Hiss! I sucked in a breath. Staring at Bruno's mix of good boy and rogue, I blurted out, let's divorce. Before I could add that I'd send the papers over tomorrow, Steven had already hung up in silence. Chapter 17. Damn it. No one at the company could locate Steven. None of the properties in his name housed him, either. He ignored every "where are you" text but, with clock-like regularity, asked whether regret was enough for me to call off the divorce. Just as the irritation became unbearable, Raphael reached out with news. The apartment in City B had been bought recently, at an inflated price. I went there and found Steven amid a mess of beer bottles and cigarette butts. The unit had once been remodeled by the previous tenant, yet everything had been restored to its original layout. Even the door lock code had been reset. Steven was huddled motionless on the sofa. I stepped in front of him and heard a voice so hoarse it barely sounded human. Is there really no room to turn this around? None. Why? I've humbled myself and begged you for so long. Bloodshot eyes lifted. I know I was wrong. I went to see Gabriella, but nothing happened, nothing. And Sister Margarita, that was the pet name he used whenever he wanted to act cute. Pitifully, he reached for the hem of my jacket. I only clung to Gabriella because of the amnesia. I couldn't let her go, still hiding behind that fake amnesia shield. I stepped back in disgust, said nothing, tossed the divorce papers onto the coffee table, and turned to leave. Only then did I notice Raphael lounging against the foyer wall, who knew how long he had been watching. Lunatics. The lot of them, expressionless. I walked toward the door. Behind me Steven broke down. Why won't you listen to any of my apologies? Explanations? I really have thought it all. Because she's known for half a year that your amnesia was fake. Raphael's mocking voice drifted over just as I crossed the threshold. I paused, surprised, and looked back. Raphael's face was indifferent. Steven's had gone deathly pale. It took him a moment to recover. He threw me a panicked glance, suddenly unsure what expression to wear. If you won't consent to the divorce, I said, we can settle it in court. Chapter 18. Steven agreed. On the day we went to the Civil Affairs Bureau to register the divorce, bruises still marked his face. Bruno waited for me outside. Steven whispered, believe it or not, nothing ever happened between Gabriella and me. I let out a long breath. Helpless. I never doubted that. Gabriella has always seen you as a little brother and a friend, never anything more. She likes women, I've known for ages. Steven stared, incredulous. There was still so much he didn't know. For example, Gabriella and I had gotten along privately even before the wedding. Before she left the country, she came to me, confided her orientation, and admitted she liked me. During the 6 months he chased her, Gabriella humored him only out of regard for me. Even the gentle but firm words she used to refuse him were the ones I'd taught her. So yes, Steven never did anything with Gabriella. But not because he didn't want to, he simply couldn't. Gabriella didn't want to. Not everything can be excused by how it ends. Attempted cheating is still cheating. Emotional cheating is cheating all the same. Steven is hypocritical and selfish, arrogant yet pathetically fragile. I truly looked down on him. Have you ever done anything with Raphael? He blurted. Of course not. Then why did he tell you my amnesia was fake? Maybe his conscience couldn't stand watching you fool your wife, I said with a laugh, my gaze skimming the cut on Steven's face. Did Raphael give you that bruise? Steven snorted. I hit him harder. A backstabbing bro, what conscience does he have? None of that concerned me. Once the paperwork was done, I walked out of the bureau, heading straight toward Bruno, Steven and I moving in opposite directions. Just when I thought everything had wrapped up smoothly, Steven suddenly shouted, "Did you show your little boyfriend the divorce agreement you drafted?" I stopped and turned, grinning. Steven enunciated every word. 5 apartments in your name, an 8-figure savings account, all under your sole control. Does that penniless boyfriend of yours know how rich you are? Chapter 19. None of us paid Steven any mind in that moment. Once we left, though, we walked home in silence. I kept twisting my fingers, tense. Bruno's face was a mask of ice, aside from knowing he wasn't in a great mood. I could read nothing else. Damn Steven. Why hadn't Raphael just beaten him to death? I never meant to hide things from Bruno forever, only to wait for the right time. If he could accept that I had a disastrous ex-husband, he could surely accept that I had money. Telling him myself and having someone else expose it are worlds apart. At our door, Bruno stopped dead. My heart squeezed. I stole a glance at his profile. Too nervous to speak, he turned to me, puzzled. Why are we standing here? Isn't the key in your bag? Ah, right. I hurried to unlock the door, but had barely stepped inside when Bruno seized my wrist. I stumbled into his chest. His voice thrummed through it. "So, you're rich?" I twisted around to explain, but he pinned me against him so I couldn't move. "You pretended to be broke because you didn't want to spend money on me? Because you don't like me? Because you think I'm not worthy?" The rapid-fire trio of questions flustered me. "Of course not. It's just that you resent rich people. So, because I like you, I took desperate measures." Bruno narrowed his eyes thoughtfully. "I resent the rich. Huh. If you never asked me, how would you know whether I resent your money?" That angle had never occurred to me. Blinking up at his clean, handsome jaw, I asked, "So, do you resent my wealth? Buy me a new guitar, and I'll go out and let everyone else resent your wealth." He pushed me the rest of the way inside. His tone was mild, but a smile lurked in it. "If there's anything else you're hiding, confess." I opened my mouth. He covered it with a broad hand, his lips brushing my ear. "Not with words." Chapter 20. The problem that had bothered me for ages was wiped away in a heartbeat by Bruno. Once everything was out in the open, I stopped pretending. I moved him into a spacious luxury flat and built a dedicated studio for him, outfitted with top-of-the-line gear. "You're turning me into your caged canary," he teased. "Would you mind?" "I'll mind the day I can't sing anymore." Bruno adjusted the equipment, outwardly calm, yet the smile tugging at his lips wouldn't go down. Truth be told, Bruno earns plenty. Pulling in 5 figures a month is nothing new, but that still can't match the fat cat capitalists. When Gabriella came back from abroad, she threw a small party. Bruno happened to be free, so I brought him along. Halfway through, Gabriella pulled me aside for a chat, and Bruno tactfully stepped away. She looked as bright as ever, raising her glass. "Steven hasn't come after you?" I sighed. "He has. For a man, whatever he can't have is always the best." The moment he saw me ignoring him, he started pestering me again, but it's handled now. Gabriella's eyes sparkled. "Handled?" Before he flew back, he declared that with me he felt like a child wandering far from home with nowhere to belong. I said, curling my lip. He even claimed he didn't really like me, only the me in his memories, and that he was coming home to find you. And you could repeat that with a straight face? I scoffed. "He was clearly shattered by your rejection." Leaning in, her perfume drifting onto me, Gabriella murmured, layered with meaning, "Not everything Steven says is just wounded pride. Anyway, your new boyfriend looks very promising." We clinked glasses, chatted a bit, and I went to look for Bruno. He wasn't in the hall, thinking he'd ducked into the restroom. I waited in the corridor until familiar voices drifted from a nearby side room. "Steven, I warned you that Margarita's only pretending to be broke. She's been lying to you for half a year and you can stomach that?" Bruno. Voice cool. "She lied because she likes me." Steven. Through clenched teeth. "Are you nuts? Spouting nonsense. You steal my wife and think you're in the right? She doesn't like you. You even deserve her? Stay with her and you'll end up living off her money, won't last long. But right now she likes me." Steven snapped. "She used to like me too. Why is it that when I lie she can't accept it? Yet when she lies to you, You're totally fine? Bruno sighed, clearly irritated. She lied for my sake. You lied for yours. Not comparable, bro. Be decisive when it's over. Clinging on is pathetic and embarrassing. Stephen roared. Could you be decisive if it were you? That piqued my interest. I'd never asked much about Bruno's past. Given how he looks, I assumed admirers lined up. Yet sometimes his innocence makes me wonder. Through the door I heard Bruno's drawl, the tail of the sentence lifting in quiet certainty. If it were me, I wouldn't let her be willing to leave me in the first place. Now that is the perfect answer. Chapter 21. After the handover with Stephen's family was complete, I jumped ship to an even larger conglomerate. I'd had the job offer in my pocket for ages, so while disentangling our shared assets I ignored a lot of petty points. In the end, everything still landed in my accounts. If a spoiled rich boy insists on giving me things, I see no reason to refuse. The new post kept me swamped at first, and Bruno happened to accept a concert tour. We went an entire month without meeting. I didn't see him, but at home I stumbled upon something curious. Tucked inside one of Bruno's old scores was a photograph. It must have been taken at some gala. I was in full evening dress, stealing a breather on the balcony, the train of my rose gold gown trailing over the edge. Warm yellow light from the room lit half my face. A cigarette glowed between my fingers, and darkness pressed close behind me. The person who snapped the candid shot had been outside in that same darkness, some distance away, so half my dress blazed bright while the other half faded to gray. My bare shoulder and neck were startlingly white. When was this taken? Such an atmospheric picture. Turning it over, I saw Bruno had scrawled a date in marker, more than a year ago, right after Stephen and I were married. I couldn't wait for Bruno to get back, so I photographed the photo and sent it to him. What's going on? He must have been busy. Hours later he replied, Why are you snooping? I'm offended. You've got nerve to be offended. You were the one who took it. Laughing, I tapped a video call. Bruno hadn't reached the hotel yet. The light stage makeup was still on his face. That handsome profile short-circuited my brain for a few seconds before I found my words. You'd been eyeing me from the start. Huh? And you knew I was faking being broke. Those first few days when I chased you and you kept that frosty facade, you must have been thrilled inside, right? Bruno, I never pegged you as so calculating. He ignored every jab, merely saying, Feels like my abs are more defined. Want me to show you when I get back to the hotel? Story 2. The 108th time Ryan abandoned me. I stumbled upon a social media post from his childhood friend. Brother is the best. Even in a heavy rainstorm, he rushed back to celebrate my birthday. Only those who are favored are truly the happiest. The post was accompanied by a picture. And in the picture, the man was none other than my husband, Ryan. He was gently covering Sarah's eyes, with a beautifully decorated cake in front of them. In the past, I would have immediately called him, demanding an explanation. But now, I'm tired. I just calmly replied, May you and your B*TCH be together forever. Chapter 1. I sat alone on the windowsill of the hotel, staring out at the rain, my vision long blurred. Even now, I can't believe that my husband would leave me once again for his childhood friend. I still remember that summer when a torrential rainstorm hit the entire city. I was trapped in the suburbs, and he drove for over 10 hours, braving the dangers to find me. Back then, I felt sorry for him and scolded him for being reckless, but he just pulled me into his arms, relieved. Chloe, I can't lose you. Yet now, he abandons me over and over again for another woman. At that moment, the phone rang. It was Ryan. He sounded frustrated. You know Sarah has depression, and yet you made such a comment to provoke her. Chloe, when did you become so cruel? I said nothing and hung up. Then came a message. Today is Sarah's birthday. If I'm not there, she might do something drastic. I left in a hurry and didn't have time to tell you. Stop making a fuss. I suddenly found it ridiculous. Every time Ryan and I were together, Sarah's depression would mysteriously return. The lies were so obvious, yet he believed them without question. When we were dating, I didn't even know Sarah existed. It wasn't until our wedding day that a girl, with a knife to her throat, asked Ryan why he wasn't marrying her. That's when I learned he had a childhood friend, Chloe. I only see her as a sister. Believe me, I believed him. So I tolerated everything. But slowly, I realized something was wrong. Her depression only seemed to flare up when I was around. I tried telling Ryan, but not only did he not believe me, he accused me of lacking compassion. After countless disappointments and being abandoned time and time again, I was tired. The man I had chased since our school days was finally out of my reach. Chapter 2. After the rain stopped, my mom came to pick me up. Seeing how disheveled I looked, she pulled me into her arms. Heartbroken. Sweetheart, don't let yourself suffer like this anymore. Come home, and I'll take care of you. The bitterness in my heart overflowed, and I buried my face in her arms, sobbing uncontrollably. In truth, my mom never supported my marriage to Ryan. She thought Ryan was arrogant and not a good match for me. It was my own stubbornness, even threatening my life, that made her relent. Now, I deserve this ending. I sent Ryan a message. Let's find a time to talk. He didn't reply to me until the next day when he called. Sarah is in a really bad mood. I stayed up all night taking care of her without any sleep. Can you be understanding and stop making a fuss? I couldn't help but let out a cold laugh. I've already made room for you too. Isn't that considerate enough? You might as well bring her home and take care of her wholeheartedly. He immediately flew into a rage. Chloe, you've grown bold, threatening me by running away from home. If you have the guts, don't ever come back. My heart was already as calm as still water. I replied coldly, fine, there's nothing left between us. What's the point of going back? He was stunned for a moment, not expecting me to be so firm, so he softened his tone. I'll come pick you up tonight after I'm done, okay? He's always like this, thinking that if he throws me some scraps, I should gratefully accept them. I know he's waiting for me to apologize, waiting for me to admit I'm petty, waiting for me to reflect on my mistakes. But I didn't reply at all. After hanging up, I added him and Sarah to my blacklist. Watching my mom busying herself in the kitchen, my nose suddenly tingled. After my father passed away, she used her frail shoulders to support our family. I grew up pampered by her love, never lifting a finger for household chores. But since marrying Ryan, worrying about his stomach problems, I learned to cook. Dish after dish got burnt, and scars piled up on my hands. Now I can cook very well, but he rarely has time to sit down and have a proper meal with me. Most of those scars have faded now, just like his love for me, gradually thinning. All these years, for a man, I stubbornly sought his favor, but ended up covered in wounds, even caused my mom to worry about me. What's so good about him that made me give up everything? Chapter 3. My mom saw me hang up the phone and cautiously asked, Honey, are you really not planning to go back? I smiled at her. Mom, I'm tired. I don't want to live just for him anymore. Her eyes reddened instantly, and she hugged me tightly. He's the blind one. Our girl is the best. That night, Ryan didn't come. Instead, he called from another number. Sarah's depression has worsened. I can't leave. You should take a taxi back yourself. I even found it laughable. She's sick but doesn't see a doctor. Instead, she looks for a married man. Is a married man her special medicine? I told you there's no need to pick me up. Just focus on taking care of her. He suddenly became angry out of embarrassment. Sarah is just my sister. Why are you always being so paranoid? If you don't want to come back, then stay out for a few more days and cool off. I didn't listen any further and hung up directly. Before long, Sarah sent me a friend request. Sis, I'm sorry. Brother Ryan is just worried about me. Please don't be mad at him, or I'll feel very guilty. I replied calmly. I'm not angry. Ryan told me he only sees you as a sister. How could I be angry with my sister? Her message came quickly. It's good that you're not angry. Brother Ryan is really something. Always leaving you because of me. In the future, I'll put in a good word for you. What a top-grade pretentious coquette. Chapter 4. I hadn't planned on going back, but then I remembered I had an important document at the house. When I opened the door, I saw Ryan and Sarah sitting on my newly bought couch, looking very close. Sarah was peeling a grape and feeding it to his mouth. The expressions on their faces were quite something when they saw me return unexpectedly. Sarah looked displeased, while Ryan seemed a bit awkward as he stood up and walked over. I thought you wouldn't be coming back anytime soon, so I brought Sarah home. I casually walked past him without a second glance. No problem. This will be your marital home from now on. Ryan's face darkened. Chloe, stop being so sarcastic the moment you walk in. Sarah is sick, and you're still provoking her. How can you be so cold-blooded? I suddenly smiled. You don't want me to provoke her? That's easy. Let's get a divorce. He immediately flew into a rage, grabbing my arm. There's a limit to how far you can go. First, you threatened me by leaving, and now you're using divorce as leverage? I've clearly spoiled you too much. On the couch, Sarah bit her lip, her eyes rimmed with red. Sister Chloe, you've misunderstood Brother Ryan. He's just worried about me. If it bothers you so much, I'll just die. Saying this, she grabbed the fruit knife from the table and pressed it against her wrist. Ryan completely panicked, letting go of me as he rushed to take the knife from Sarah's hand. Sarah, don't be impulsive. It's her fault. No one's blaming you. Please put the knife down. I couldn't care less about their melodramatic scene and turned to my bedroom to pack my things. When I came back out, Sarah was leaning against Ryan's chest, flashing me a provocative smile. Seeing the suitcase in my hand, Ryan let go of Sarah and grabbed my wrist. Don't think you can just walk away. Apologize to Sarah right now. He was strong, and I couldn't break free, so I just glared at him coldly. She's threatened to kill herself so many times. If she had the guts, she'd have done it by now. I could have had a feast already. Ryan looked at me, disappointed. Chloe, this is a matter of life and death. Yet all you can do is be jealous. How did you become so cruel? I laughed out of anger, then stomped hard on his foot. He yelped in pain and let go of me. Without hesitation, I raised my hand and slapped him hard across the face. If you want to talk about cruelty, that would be you. You gave Sarah false hope, then turned around and married me. You're the one who's been tangled up with her during our marriage, making two women suffer for you. Do you enjoy that kind of treatment? Sorry, but I'm done playing along. I put all my strength into that slap, and his face immediately swelled and reddened. Sarah, full of concern, gently stroked Ryan's face, her voice laced with anger. Chloe, what gives you the right to hit him? Do you even know how hard Ryan's been working lately? Taking care of me and still having to deal with your emotions? Can't you be more understanding toward him? I couldn't help but mock her. Everyone's asking me to be understanding. How should I be more understanding? By handing over my husband to you? Is that considerate enough? Sure, take him. I don't want this trash anymore. You can pick it up. Tears instantly welled up in Sarah's eyes, and she looked aggrieved. You're being too cruel. You just want me dead. I didn't bother arguing with her any further. I grabbed my suitcase and walked out the door. Chapter 5. After that day, Ryan didn't come looking for me. He probably thought I'd throw a little tantrum like before and come back after a few days. After all, throughout our marriage, every time we fought, I was the one who apologizes first. That was until I sent him the divorce papers. Ryan called me, furious. You're being ridiculous. Do you really think I won't divorce you? Aren't you afraid of that? I couldn't help but sneer. Afraid of what? Afraid I'll never find another piece of trash like you? He cursed under his breath, his voice growing colder. Chloe, you're really pushing your luck now. You've cursed me, slapped me, and now what more do you want? All these years, I've given you everything, food, clothes, you still want more? I couldn't help but laugh coldly. I only want one thing, divorce. Can you give me that? In his eyes, I was nothing but someone he provided for, someone useless without him. But he forgot that when he first started his business, he had nothing. It was me who asked my friends to lend him money bit by bit. It was me who accompanied him to every social event, swallowing drink after drink, trading my health for his future. And in the process, I lost our baby. Back then, he cried and promised me he'd take care of me for the rest of my life. But now, only 5 years later, everything has changed. He hung up the phone, and moments later, I received a message from him. If you don't want to make a scene in front of my mom, get down here now. Ever since his company grew bigger, his attitude towards me became more impatient. Every word he said to me felt like a command, as if I were not his wife, but his subordinate. I picked up my phone and went downstairs. He drove quickly, heading straight to a restaurant by the seaside. You've been talking about coming here for a while, so today I brought you to try it, he said. This place was very popular, and I had mentioned countless times that I wanted him to take me here. But every time, something came up, and 9 times out of 10, it was about Sarah. Back then, I had argued with him about it, but all he said was, "Calm down," before slamming the door and leaving. In fact, I had already been to this restaurant myself before. It wasn't as good as I imagined, much like my marriage with Ryan, bland and flavorless. As soon as we sat down, his phone started ringing. He glanced at it but didn't pick up. It rang again and again, and his expression became more anxious. He grabbed his phone and walked out. Soon, he came back, with a hint of apology on his face. "Sarah's mood is unstable again. I'll be right back. Just wait for me here." I said nothing. He grabbed his coat from the back of the chair and hurried off. He thought that by merely bringing me here for a meal, he could smooth things over. After all, 4 years, his way of placating me had always been the same, and it always worked. But the truth is, I wasn't easy to appease. I just loved him. But this time, I didn't want to love him anymore. Loving him was too exhausting. When I got home, a notification popped up on my phone. It was a photo of Sarah, lying happily on a man's back. I recognized the man instantly. It was Ryan. I still remember the first time I saw Ryan. He gave me this exact same view of his back. At that time, I was attending an event off campus and had twisted my ankle. He crouched down in front of me and carried me to the school infirmary just like that. The sunlight fell on the side of his face, and in that moment, I couldn't help but fall for him. After we started dating, every time I pouted or acted spoiled, he would lovingly tap my nose. Then he'd bend down and say, "Hop on, my little princess." Those beautiful moments feel like they were just yesterday, but now someone else has taken my place on his back. I really don't understand how someone who once loved me so much could change so quickly. Chapter 6. Half asleep, I was woken up by the sound of my phone ringing. It was Ryan. On the other end, his voice was cold. "Didn't we agree you'd wait for me? Where are you?" I suddenly felt like laughing. How had I never noticed how self-centered he was before? "I've waited long enough. I don't want to wait anymore." Then I hung up and turned off my phone. For so many years, I've been waiting for him to marry me, waiting for him to come home, waiting for him to make time for me. In the past, I would stubbornly keep waiting, but now, I don't want to wait even one more second. I didn't expect Sarah to come looking for me alone. "Chloe, you've really misunderstood Ryan. He's just worried about my health. Why do you have to be so petty?" I let out a cold laugh and tore through her pretense. "Why bother pretending? Don't you know whether you're sick or not?" She smiled, bright and proud. "Chloe, aren't you being stupid? But what do you have to compete with me? Look at yourself now. How can you even compare to me?" She didn't need to say it. I already knew. I was disheveled, and compared to her, all dressed up and glamorous, there was no comparison. I didn't bother responding and tried to walk past her, ready to leave, but she grabbed my hand, her gaze turning vicious. "Ryan and I have been childhood sweethearts for over 20 years. If it weren't for you, he would never have left me. So, Chloe, you're the one who's forcing me." The next second, she threw herself down the stairs. At that moment, Ryan appeared. He rushed over and scooped Sarah into his arms, gently comforting her. "Sarah, where did you hurt yourself? Does it hurt? Do you need to go to the hospital?" Tears welled up in Sarah's eyes. "Ryan, don't blame Chloe. It's my fault for upsetting her. It's only right that she scolds me." Ryan's face was filled with fury as he slapped me across the face. "Chloe, I thought you were just being a little stubborn. I never thought you could be this cruel." He held Sarah in his arms and quickly left. "I thought we could part on good terms, but it seems we can't." Chapter 7. I began contacting lawyers. deciding to file for divorce. On the day of the hearing, I didn't see Ryan. Instead, I ran into his mother. The moment she saw me, Ryan's mother pointed at me and started shouting, "Chloe, you've really got some nerve. Daring to sue my son. Fine, you want a divorce. But don't think for a second you'll get a penny from my family." Ryan's mother never liked me from the start. She looked down on me for being from a single-parent family and had always found faults in me throughout our marriage. For Ryan's sake, I kept tolerating her, thinking that if I treated her well, she would eventually accept me. But slowly, I realized that people's prejudices don't change. The more I tried to please her, the more she took advantage of me. When I bought her things out of kindness, she accused me of wasting her son's money. If I dared to retort that the money was my own, she'd run to Ryan to complain, saying I was disrespecting her. At first, Ryan would defend me, arguing on my behalf. But as time went on, he took his frustration out on me. He started blaming me for not handling these small issues and distracting him with my complaints. After that, I stopped complaining to Ryan. Standing before me now, Ryan's mother continued her tirade. "My son Ryan is handsome, talented, there are so many girls lined up waiting for him. Getting rid of you is exactly what I wanted." I couldn't help but laugh angrily. I stepped forward and said, "If you think your son is so great, you should find him a few more wives. That way, you'll have more daughters-in-law to boss around, right? As for me, don't bother worrying about me. After all, your son is nothing more than trash I've thrown away." Her face immediately twisted in rage. I told Ryan he shouldn't marry a girl from a single-parent family. He never listened. A family without a father or mother, what kind of person could they raise? Our Ryan is just too kind-hearted. That's why he was fooled by a woman like you. I didn't bother responding. I turned and walked toward the courthouse. In court, Ryan insisted on not divorcing me, until I presented the intimate photos Sarah had sent over the years. There were photos of her pouting and kissing his cheek, clinging to him, and even one of Ryan holding Sarah while shirtless. These images had once caused me sleepless nights. But now, as I looked at them, I felt nothing. Ryan wasn't unaware of Sarah's manipulations. He simply used it to his advantage, lingering between two women, enjoying my care while basking in Sarah's admiration. The court ultimately granted our divorce and ordered the division of marital assets in accordance with the law. After the trial, I was discussing with my lawyer where to go to celebrate when Ryan suddenly grabbed my arm and pulled me aside. "Chloe, are you satisfied now? I'd like to see how you're going to live without me." Ryan sneered. In his eyes, I was nothing more than a pampered housewife, with a life that revolved solely around him. But he forgot I used to be an excellent fashion designer. He was the one who said he wanted a strong supporter. So, I resolutely quit my job to become a housewife. For the past few years, I have been busy pleasing my mother-in-law, taking care of Ryan, who left early and came home late, sometimes so busy that I forgot about myself. When Sarah began appearing more frequently in our lives, I knew Ryan had changed. His affection for Sarah was no longer the same brotherly care he once had. He would let Sarah drink from his glass, tolerate her teasing and hugs, and remember every special occasion for her. But when it came to me, it was just thoughtless gifts, always the things Sarah didn't want, and even our wedding anniversary had to be repeatedly reminded before he would remember. This one-sided effort to maintain our relationship had become too exhausting, and it was time to finally end it. I struggled out of his grasp and slapped him hard across the face. "How I live from now on has nothing to do with you." That slap was long overdue. You know me, I always repay what's owed. With that, I turned and walked away, not bothering to look back. Chapter 8. After the divorce, my best friend and I opened a fashion store together, and business was booming. But then, a video suddenly surfaced online. It was Sarah, broadcasting on a live streaming platform, accusing me of stealing her boyfriend and pushing her down the stairs. For a time, the internet was filled with heated discussions, and some viewers, digging into her previous videos, managed to find my personal information. My social media accounts were immediately flooded with attacks. "Rot in hell. You be *TCH. This woman is evil." Knowing the other girl had depression, she still kept provoking her. Not only did she steal her boyfriend, But she tried to murder her. She deserves to be locked up for years. The store's business suffered greatly, and many people who didn't know the truth even sent funeral wreaths to my house and shop. Enraged, I called Ryan. Can you control your dog and stop her from attacking me? Or don't blame me if I fight back. Ryan was silent for a while and then simply said, I really didn't know about this. After hanging up, I calmly compiled the full timeline of my relationship with Ryan and Sarah, laying out all the details. I also uploaded the surveillance footage from the stairwell. Soon, the tide of public opinion turned against Sarah. All I'm getting is that pretentious vibe. This girl must have been drinking too much green tea. She tried to be a mistress, failed, then turned around and framed someone else, using depression as a cover. Absolutely despicable. Trashy guy and trashy girl. A perfect match. Luckily, the blogger got out fast. Before long, Sarah was detained for defamation. Ryan came to see me, looking much more worn out than before. He immediately tried to grab my hand, but I pulled away. Chloe, I'm sorry. I misunderstood you. There had been too many misunderstandings over the years. But now, I don't care anymore. His face fell. Chloe, is there still a chance for us? I shook my head. Chapter 9. After leaving Ryan, I found that the nightmares that once plagued me no longer returned. I no longer had to worry about whether he had eaten or if his stomach was bothering him. I no longer had to anxiously stare at my phone, waiting for a response. I no longer had to question who he was with or if I still had a place in his heart. I focused all my time on my work, and the store's business steadily improved. The next time I saw Ryan was at my best friend's wedding. I was busy greeting guests when he suddenly showed up. The way he looked at me held a hint of admiration. Chloe, you look beautiful today. Now, I could face him with calmness and just smiled, nodding. Thank you. On the stage, the groom knelt on one knee, and the bride's face was filled with happiness. For a moment, it reminded me of how Ryan and I used to be. Back then, he had looked at me the same way, full of love. He had loudly proclaimed to everyone, Chloe, Ryan, will love you for the rest of my life. When did it all start to change? Was it when I went to his office and saw the impatience on his face? Was it the countless nights I waited for him without a single message? Was it the times Sarah provoked me again and again, and he turned a blind eye, despite knowing the truth? Applause thundered through the hall, pulling me back to reality. When I looked at Ryan, he was already staring at me. I quickly looked away. After the ceremony, my best friend came over with a man and introduced him. Chloe, this is my husband's friend. He's in the fashion business too. You two should chat sometime. She winked at me, and I understood her intention, smiling as I agreed. The man in front of me was quite the gentleman. He extended his long fingers and gently clasped mine. Nice to meet you. My name is Leo. Just then, Ryan appeared out of nowhere, grabbing my wrist and pulling me aside. Chloe, we just got divorced, and you're already rushing to find someone else? I yanked my hand out of his grasp, deliberately putting distance between us. We're divorced now. Even if I went to get married today, you'd have no right to interfere. He stepped forward and pulled me into his arms. Chloe, I know I was wrong. The moment I saw him holding your hand, I went crazy. I finally realized how much pain you've been in all these years. Chloe, please give me another chance. I struggled hard, but the tighter he held me, my nails scratched long marks down his face. Ryan, you make me sick. His arms suddenly dropped, and his eyes were filled with sadness. Chloe, how did we end up like this? We used to be so in love. For the first time, this once composed and self-assured man lost control. He crouched down on the ground and began to sob. I found it incredibly ironic. I used to go out of my way to please him, and he couldn't have cared less, treating me like I was worthless. Now that I no longer love him, he's clinging to me. Ryan, delayed affection is worth less than grass. Leaving him with those words, I didn't look back as I walked away. Chapter 10. Leo asked me out a few more times, but I turned him down each time. My best friend said I was like someone who had been bitten by a snake, forever scared of ropes. I smiled. She wasn't wrong. The damage Ryan had done to me was too great. The sweetness of love could very easily turn into the pain of marriage. I was too afraid to take that gamble again and didn't want to. Perhaps one day, there will be someone who can make me let go of everything and open my heart to love again. I'm waiting for that day to come. The end.